Hey you guys, and welcome back. So before we get into the video, if you could go ahead and hit the like button for me. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. I will be so happy to have you. Please make sure to also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when I upload the next video. And please, please, please share this video with other like-minded black women. So I wanted to read to you from an article that I found very interesting. Because in talking about police reform, we need to kind of have as much information as possible when we push to have certain reforms put into place, concerning what's been beneficial and what has not been beneficial. So it says, police kill unarmed blacks more often, especially when they are women, study finds. Blacks, especially women, are more likely to have been unarmed when killed by police than non-blacks. And that risk appears to increase in police departments with a greater presence of non-white officers. And this is according to a new study of nationwide data from Washington University in St. Louis. A key finding of the study is that nearly 60% of black women killed by police were unarmed at the time of the interaction. The study is the first in a series of reports from the ongoing Fatal Interactions with Police research project, which includes contributions from public health and biostatistics experts at hospitals and universities, including St. Louis University, New York University, and Harvard University. While the odds of being killed by police when unarmed were about the same for black and white males, the high percentage of unarmed black women killed by police significantly increased the overall odds for unarmed blacks, which essentially means that the percentage of black women killed while being unarmed was so great that it bumped up the numbers for blacks overall. So even though, the percentage for black and white males were about the same, because so many of the black women who were killed by police were unarmed, that increased the percentage of black people who were unarmed when they were killed by the police, is what I'm saying. I hope that makes sense. Our analysis finds that the hands up, don't shoot slogan of the post-Ferguson movement becomes most relevant when you also say her name, said lead researcher Otis Johnson, associate professor of education and of sociology both in arts and sciences. Nonetheless, the odds of an unarmed fatality for black Americans as a whole was a staggering 6.6 to 1, more than double the odds found in several other national studies completed in recent decades. The Say Her Name social movement was launched in 2015 to draw attention to the death of Chicago resident Rekia Boyd and other unarmed black women killed during interactions with police. This study is the first to provide hard data to back up the movement's assertion that black women face a high risk of being killed by police. And I apologize if you hear the train in the background. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. The study also suggests that many tactics implemented to curb police violence, such as the use of body cameras and diversifying police forces by adding more non-white officers, have done little to reduce the number of people killed in police interactions. Agencies with more officers of color had significantly increased odds of committing unarmed fatalities, suggesting that current levels of agency diversity are not capable of achieving change. We recommend caution in interpreting this result since our data does not track the race of the police officers connected to each fatality. Thus, we are unable to say whether the actions of officers of color directly increase the odds of unarmed fatalities for racial/ethnic groups. And so I'm going to skip down some and just read some of the other points that the study made. It says other findings from the first report include nearly 94% of those killed by police are men. About 46% are white. About 22% had a history of drug abuse or mental illness. The ages of unarmed people killed by police in the database range from 5 to more than 100 years old, including people who were 101, 103, and 107. More than 57% of African American women were killed while unarmed. White males were the least likely to have been unarmed when killed at just under 20%. And so this is why we need data like this, because many times you hear people saying, okay, well, more white people are killed by police officers than anyone else. But also you have to pair that with the fact that over 80-something% of the white people who were killed by the police were armed at the time. So we really don't know the ins and outs of whether it was the person was just armed or was the person, threatening the police officer with the weapon. When you look at the FBI stats, like going back years and years and years, you will see that the majority of the police officers are actually killed by white people. And so as Black women, I wanted us to have some discussion surrounding this, especially following the video that I uploaded yesterday that contains section 2 of the report on Black male racial victimhood. And remember where it talks about the police officer who was speaking to the domestic violence survivors, the women who were there, and he was telling them that in many cases the male police officer, he gets there and he sympathizes with the man. He sympathizes with the abuser. And so I wanted to speak about that as it relates specifically to this idea by Black people that just having more Black people on the police force is actually going to make a difference in terms of how much police brutality Black people are experiencing. Because as you see on social media, even when you're talking about something as gruesome, as vile, as disgusting, as grown men gang sexually assaulting a little Black girl, and how Black men will come up and they will gaslight and deflect and condone and cover for and make excuses for this type of behavior. Now, can you imagine more of these kind of men who are admittedly not the Pookies and Ray Rays, so they don't view themselves as being the Pookies and Ray Rays, they view themselves as being the educated lame. So can you imagine these men en masse going into the police force and then having to go out to a call about a child being sexually assaulted, or a woman being sexually assaulted, or a woman being beaten, and the person who has committed these acts just so happens to be a Black man, and how he would be relating to him and how she would be treated? Could you imagine how that child, that little Black child, or that Black woman would be treated or viewed? I was on Paris Milan's last live. I caught the end part of it. But I was on her last live, and there was a Black man who called up on her show, and he was a police officer. And the whole time he was talking about how he relates to his community, he was talking about Black men and how he intercedes between the Black men who are loud and, that's just how they talk. They talk loud, we talk aggressive, this, that, and the third, being an intercessor between the Black males and the non-Black males who he works with. So that kind of mentality is already ingrained, not just in Black men, but just in men in general. With men, that's the way they kind of think. They identify with other men. They feel for other men. It's unfortunate that women aren't necessarily the same. Right? I guess it depends on the race and ethnic background of the victim. You also heard in that report where the woman stood up and talked about how she was treated by some of the Black women, right? Then you think about the incident with Megan Thee Stallion where she had been shot in both her feet, and she's standing there in the police station, and there's a female officer who's just being nasty and treating her like she's a problem, and she's standing there with bloody feet and she's just treating her like she's less than, showing no sympathy, no empathy, no care or concern. So this idea that if you just put certain genders or certain races into those positions that it will make things better, I think that is, a false assumption. And so that's not something I think that people should be hanging their hat on, that's going to be the solution to the problem. I think the solution to the problem is going to be policy and legislation changes. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. You guys have a great day, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.